Good evening. I'll be presenting from Medicine 1 today. My topic of the topic of my presentation is false alarm. Presenting the history of this patient, this was a 56-year-old housewife from Vellore who had come to us with a history of fever for the past 9 days and breathing difficulty for the past 1 day. So she was apparently well 9 days ago when she developed fever that was high grade with chills and no rigors. This was also associated with increased tiredness and severe fatigue. She also developed sudden onset breathlessness 1 day ago and she was breathless at rest, which made her come to our casualty. She had no known comorbidities. On examination, she was conscious and oriented. She was obese, and her vital signs were she had a pulse of 128 per minute, saturation of 93% on room air, with a respiratory rate of 36 per minute. On general examination, she had an eschar, which we saw over the left breast. There was no pallor-icterus, clubbing, cyanosis, lymphadenopathy, or edema. The JVP was not elevated. Otherwise, systemic examination, there were minimal fine crepitations that were heard bilaterally. So our provisional diagnosis with an acute undifferentiated febrile illness with an eschar, we thought of scrub typhus. The breathlessness we thought was due to an ARDS, a myocarditis, or an exacerbation of an underlying obstructive airway disease. So investigation wise, she had a hemoglobin of 6.3 gram percent with a microcytic picture with an MCV of 60.2. Corrected reticulocyte count was coming to 1.6, so it was a hyperproliferative microcytic hypochromic anemia. Platelet counts were 12,000 per cubic millimeter and WBCs were 6,200 with a neutrophil predominance of 63%, lymphocytes of 32%, creatinine was 1.06, LFT was SGOT was slightly elevated with 105, and chest X-ray was unremarkable. She had an iron of 17 and the TIBC of 280, because of which we thought of iron deficiency anemia in her. Vitamin B12 was also on the lower side, 206 with a folic acid of 3.1. So we thought of an iron deficiency as well as a vitamin B12 deficiency anemia. ECG was normal, CKMB properties were normal, stool occult blood and stool routine parasites were negative, dengue serology was negative, and scrub IgM was positive. So our diagnosis for her was a scrub typhus with an early ARDS. The anemia was thought to be multifactorial because of an iron and a vitamin B12 deficiency. The thrombocytopenia was thought to be due to scrub typhus related or a vitamin B12 deficiency related thrombocytopenia. So her course in hospital was she was given doxycycline, vitamin B12, and IV iron. She also required BiPAP for a day, and two Paxils were transfused as well. And she improved clinically. She became afebrile. So although she clinically improved and her hemoglobin started coming up, we found that her platelets were still low. She was persistently being low. It was not improving even after the vitamin B12 correction. So we thought of why this patient was actually having a persistent thrombocytopenia. So we thought of megaloblastic anemia, but the retics had started to improve, the hemoglobin had improved, but why was the thrombocytopenia not improving? Then we also thought of an underlying secondary etiology. So CLD was ruled out, imaging showed no features suggestive of CLD, albumin was normal. Splenomegaly, there was a sonological splenomegaly, although clinically not picked up. It was a mild splenomegaly. Another thing that we considered was an ITP, which was unmasked or precipitated by a scrub typhus. She also developed a new spike of fever. So because of that, with the bicytopenia, the fever, and the splenomegaly, we also considered HLH, which was lower down on our list. So the patient was clinically well, and the other cell lines were normal. We also thought of a pseudothrombocytopenia, which could be occurring. So we read upon what pseudothrombocytopenia was. So before any evaluation of thrombocytopenia, we should always consider pseudothrombocytopenia. The most common cause is an EDTA dependent pseudothrombocytopenia. So 0.1% individuals have EDTA dependent agglutinins that can cause platelet clumping. So what happens is that there are naturally occurring platelet autoantibodies. The EDTA actually conceals an epitope that is present on the GP2B3A receptor on the platelet. So when that gets uncovered, this platelet autoantibody that is naturally occurring in plasma of certain individuals, they attach to the platelet, the receptor, and thus cause clumping. So our patient had platelet clumps in peripheral smear. So then we sent a citrated sample, but that was also less than 10,000. So then we read up, and then we found that clumps can still be present in, and the clumps were still present in the citrated sample. So then we read up and we found that around 20% of cases with EDTA-induced PTP, they also show a phenomenon, similar phenomenon in citrated anticoagulant as well. So then the next step that we did was we sent a heparinase sample. In that also it was 26,200. So there were clumps in the heparinase sample in our patient as well. So then we read up and we found that pseudothrombocytopenia can be associated with heparin as well. So in the meantime, we also worked up for other causes other than pseudothrombocytopenia in our patient, and we found that the bone marrow was a normocellular marrow with adequately increased megakaryocytes. And there was the new spike of fever had resolved, and we had thought that that was due to a thrombophlebitis, and ferritin, fibrinogen, triglycerides are all normal. So our confusion here was whether or not this was a pseudothrombocytopenia that we were dealing with, or if it was an ITP. So whether or not to give steroid or not to give any steroid. So what we thought was, what do we do if there are clumps even on a citrated sample and even on a heparinase sample? So when we read up literature, we saw that there were a few case reports which suggested that the pseudothrombocytopenia that is caused by EDTA can be inhibited by kanamycin. So it dissociates the platelet aggregates when kanamycin is added within 30 minutes following blood collection. So the exact mechanism of this is, however, unknown. So why pseudothrombocytopenia in our patient? We found case reports of pseudothrombocytopenia being reported in scrub typhus, like in our patient as well. So this was what had happened. So this was a heparinase sample that I talked earlier about, which was 24,000. And when we added when we added kanamycin to the EDTA2, we saw that it had dissociated and the platelet counts were 1,62,000. So hence our patient had pseudothrombocytopenia because of scrub typhus. So in a patient with thrombocytopenia, if there are clumps that are present, you should always consider pseudothrombocytopenia. It's far from being a harmless curiosity. Undiagnosed pseudothrombocytopenia is a pitfall, and that leads to unwarranted investigations, platelet transfusion, treatment with glucocorticoids to treat for an ITP. So we also learned about the fact that even if there are clumps in heparinase samples, we can use kanamycin to disintegrate the platelet clumps. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya, for that fascinating presentation. Can I ask Amit to comment? Is Amit on the...
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Now we can hear
Hello.
you. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I don't have anything further to add. In fact, when we unofficially discussed this over a cup of coffee with hematologists, they said, why don't you just give some steroids and see if it improves its ITP, if it's not, it's pseudothrombocytopenia, why break your head over it? But then it's just clinically too well to consider any abnormality in her. And we could finally prove that it's a pseudothrombocytopenia. It was just an interesting point that we wanted to share.
Thank you, Amit. That was pretty fascinating. Any comments from Sir Dr. Osier, Dr. Anand, Dr. Samuel Hanstock, or any of the other consultants?
Can I ask a question to Shreya and Amit? This patient's first CBC itself showed clumps, and you said patient did very well, except for the one spike of fever which was not expected. She did very well. So many hats off to you for establishing the diagnosis in a very conclusive manner. But then the message to the rest of the crowd, should it be that we should take out all the specialized investigations or give a steroid trial, or if the patient is getting better and it shows steroid clumps, just follow up?
Sir, if I could take that question, the message is definitely to just follow up if it is showing platelet clumps. The only thing is that here, few of the smears, they did say there were clumps. Few of them they did not. They did not mention the clumps, and few of them when we asked for them, they said yes, there are clumps. But and the counts were too low. It was 5,000, 2,500, not a comfortable value for us to send the patient back on. That is the reason we wanted to demonstrate at least one value which is above 20,000 before we could make that confident decision to send the patient off.
Thanks, Amit.
Amit, I have a question for you. That I understand that there was all the 3 cell lines were kind of affected somewhere along because there was a B12 deficiency. How long did you follow up that patient? Because I saw multiple values over.
She was in the ward for about 16 days, ma'am. So
16
even after she finished, she got 6 days of IV vitamin B12. We waited for some time to see if it is actually improving. The platelets, the hemoglobin retics came up, LDH dropped, counts came up, but the platelets were still low.
Sure. So the platelets was about 26 when you sent her back.
The platelets were 1,68,000 when we sent her
1
back.
lakh.
I mean, it was probably normal all along the line.
Okay, sure. I missed that last bit. Okay, sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Just one question. What is the dose of kanamycin that you give?
It's into the
EDTA tube. I'm not sure, sir.
Sir,
How much did they add?
a concentration of 0.1% kanamycin was used, sir. I'm not sure about what is the amount of. We actually sent the patient to the pathology lab. They collected the blood and immediately mixed it with the reagent. There's a 0.1% kanamycin solution.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, Amit, this kanamycin bit, did you figure out or did clinical pathology suggest?
Sort of happened simultaneously, ma'am. In fact, the first person to suggest was Dr. Tulasi to my registrar. And by evening, when I told him, he said Dr. Tulasi also already suggested this.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. That was very fascinating. And I think the fact that you followed it up to make sure that you did not give unnecessary steroids was really heartening. Can you move on to the next?
Ma'am, Shreya was not actually the patient registrar who saw this patient. And so hats off to her for having found out the details and presented well.
Thank you, Shreya. Thank you, Amit. We'll move to the next case by Medicine 2, Circuit Breaker by Dr. Thomas.